Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Get Sculpted podcast. Before we fully jump into today's episode, I want to share something with you that you actually might not know. Tomorrow is the second Friday of January, and it is officially known as Quitter's Day. And you may not have actually heard that term before, but we are going to bet that you have experienced it at some point in your life, maybe even every January. Quitter's Day is that day where most people throw in the towel on their New Year's resolutions. And this is where you'll start to notice that, the gyms that were once packed 2 weeks before are now empty. You might notice that, you've been eating on a meal plan or a nutrition plan, and all of a sudden that gets tossed to the side. That new year, new me energy that you started the year off with totally fades away. It happens to people every single year. And it has nothing to do with the fact that people are lazy or they don't want to get fit and healthy. They do, but it is because they're relying on motivation instead of building momentum. So that's what today's episode is going to be all about. And we want you to know that we don't want you to feel guilty or ashamed if this is you right now, if you're already in this quitter's mode. What we want to do is create awareness around why it's happening. And as always, we want to give you the tools so you can stop repeating that yo-yo cycle that you've probably lived year after year after year. Because if you want this year to look different, you need to understand why quitting feels so easy and familiar and how to break away from it. Okay, so today we're going to break down 3 things. We're going to talk about the mindset that causes you to quit. We're going to talk about the strategies that you're using that are actually keeping you stuck. And then we're going to talk about how to build the consistency that's going to carry you through the rest of the year, not just these first 2 weeks. So if you're already feeling called out, and we don't want you to, but we want to make you aware of this. If you want more personalized support with breaking this cycle, you can always reach out to us through our contact form, because even just starting that conversation might get the ball rolling for you so we can help you figure out your next steps. So ladies, are you ready to get into this Quitter's Day conversation?
No more quitters.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's squash it.
Quitters are done now. Okay. So let's start with the reason why most people do quit, right? And like I said, it's not because you're lazy. And I know we start to think like, it's my busy schedule, I have to take the kids here and I have to do this. And it's not because you're not capable. It's totally about mindset and how you're going into this new year. So what happens for a lot of people is that they go into the new year completely relying on motivation. And motivation's great in the beginning, right? Because you have that excitement, but guess what? It always fades away. Mm-hmm. And it's normal because there's not a person in the world who feels motivated 100% of the time. And that goes for us as well. Ladies, would you like, we're not always
Absolutely.
Motivated, right? But the big problem is expecting that motivation is going to carry you the whole way. And it just won't. Like that full stop, it will not. The second piece, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, is your identity. So a lot of women will say they want to get fit, but they never actually step into the identity of someone who lives a fit lifestyle. So if you're not owning that identity, it means that you're just chasing a feeling, which is fleeting. That's going to go away. So when we think about the women we work with, right, who are the most successful at transforming their bodies, they actually don't really depend on motivation at all. They get to a point where they're depending on their routines, their habits, and the systems that we help them put in place so they can follow it day in and day out. I'm going to say even, but actually especially when they don't feel like it, right? Do you girls want to add anything to that?
I think it's really important that you get into this mindset no matter where you're at in your journey. And one thing I always tell people in our initial call is everybody wants a change, but not everyone is ready for transformation.
Yeah, I love that.
So change means like, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds for the beach. Who doesn't freaking want to lose a few pounds and look better and look tighter? But transformation means like, hey, I'm actually understanding that like the lifestyle I'm living, the mindset I'm in is keeping me where I'm at. This is my 1.0. I have to think differently and act differently and make uncomfortable changes to transform.
That's
and
right.
I always ask people, I'm like, are you at that stage? Because if you're not, that's okay. But we can't help at the moment, right? Because if you're at the place where you just want to see the change happen, but you don't want to do the work to make the transformation, this isn't going to stick for you. And you're listening to this because you want it to stick for you. So like you said, Mare, go into it with like, I'm not changing the person I am, but I'm leveling up. You're the 2.0 version of yourself, not someone else.
You want to be ready to evolve, right?
Yeah.
And grow. And on one hand, like I think people are really good at being able to do that when it comes to like at work, when you set new goals for work and you're ready to grow and you're ready to receive feedback. Maybe you don't like the feedback, but you're going to implement it, especially for all my corporate girlies out there. Like you'll go through performance reviews and you'll be up for a promotion and all of those things, right? But when it comes to like our personal life, and especially when it comes to fitness and health and our habits, we don't like showing that side as much in the early days because it feels icky and it feels like failure and it feels like we have to uncover a lot of vulnerable places. And so being ready for transformation can feel hard because there's a lot of fear underneath that. And I think that's where people then get caught up in these short-term high level goals, which if you were to relate that back to work, your boss would tell you, or if you're the owner of the company, you'd be like, that's not enough to grow. We need to go deeper than just like managing 10% less spend, right? We need to actually figure out how to acquire more customers or how to do this or how to do that in our business and really grow. And so that it's sustainable, so that we're not always working as hard. And so when we're to create that growth, and that's when you think about your fitness transformation, you want to have the same mindset of working smarter, not harder, to creating that transformation in a long-term way so that you feel the short-term benefits, but that you really get where you actually want to go.
That's a really good point. Love that. So keeping in line with this mindset that a lot of people have around quitting, the other thing, and we also talk a lot about this on the podcast, is that all or nothing thinking. And I get it because I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I know just like for a lot of women, I used to be in that situation where, I would kick things off really strong. And then as soon as something comes up, you miss a workout or you have an off-plan meal, suddenly it's, okay, I'll restart. And that's the pattern that a lot of women get into. And that is perfectionism. That's what it is. It's trying to convince you that if you can't do it perfectly, then what's the point of doing it at all? So again, that's going to keep you stuck in this quitting cycle. So the shift you need to make, and the shift we want you to make, is you have to stop asking yourself, like, how can I stay motivated? I'm just not motivated enough. And instead you need to start asking yourself, how can I stay consistent when motivation isn't there? Because that's what separates women who are going to follow through this January and beyond from the ones who quit every January. And, we want you to stop and think about this. How many times have you in your life started the new year strong, felt amazing for a week or two, and then when life got busy, you went back into that cycle of restarting? We want that to stop. We want that to stop. And we want you to understand that it's not about failing. It was just that your identity and your actions were not aligned. Okay. But once you start aligning those two things and showing up as that 2.0 version of yourself, that's when things are going to change for you.
So Jack, one of the quotes I use with my clients very often, which is, we can always change the plan, but not compromise on the goal. So it should never mean abandoning the path, right? Like, we always want to move in the right direction. So even I always say, sometimes you have the foot on the gas and you're going full speed and you're like locked in with like your meal. I mean, in the first couple of weeks of the year, everybody's doing that, right? Like they're like, I'm doing it. But then when shit hits the fan, excuse my French, then it's like, you don't just take your foot off the gas and just stay where you are. You're like, all right, I'm going to get out and I'm going to walk now. I'm going to take a different path, right? So it's just modifying your approach versus abandoning it.
I was going to say, that's one of the things I always say to my clients. We adjust, we don't abandon. Right? Because you can always adjust, you can always pivot, you can do those things, but it doesn't have to be a start and stop, because otherwise you're in that cycle forever, right?
That's why having a coach is so great, because as long as all you got to do is lean into your coach and make it a collaborative effort. We always tell people, like, we can't do the reps for you, but we can modify your plan so that it's manageable, not easy, but manageable enough that you're stacking wins. And people think they have to go at it alone and they're a lone wolf. Those tend to be the people staying stuck, because when they're not perfect, they're zero, like they go off. So
yeah, exactly. And let's just put this out there. You are going to face challenges, right? 1000% things are going to come up, things that things that you can't even foresee yet. So having that support, obviously, to help you adjust and pivot is so important. So that's the mindset piece of this. But we know that that's not the only reason that women quit around this time of year. The other part is the actual, the things, the strategies they're using that are keeping them stuck. So Jord, I'd love if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like a lot of women are really starting to wake up to wanting something more sustainable. This all or nothing thing, it's exhausting. And I think what I was like thinking about when you guys were talking before about perfectionism and the all or nothing piece, it's kind of like something that I was working on was like, perfectionism is actually procrastination. And wanting to be perfect is your way of actually pausing, taking imperfect action, which is actually not taking any action at all.
You're right.
And so that's how you end up staying stuck. So if you want to reframe every time I'm trying to be perfect as I'm actually getting in my own way in order to create, I'll only take, you're basically making a rule, say I'm only going to take action as long as the conditions allow me to take action, or and not just taking any action at all, just get the ball rolling or to keep the momentum building. And so when you think about how that translates into the actual strategies that women are using, is that everything seems to be like it has to be so big and so perfect and so all encompassing and everything all at once all the time. And that's when we get overwhelmed, burnt out, and we're like, this is BS. I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I'm out. And if it means that I have to just accept where I'm at, then so be it. And I think that's where, you know, I want women to really wake up and be like, it doesn't have to be that way. No. And I can do a lot less and actually get a lot further along because I can keep doing it. And so when we think about like, you know, those specific things and you're sitting there being like, well, I've made these goals for myself, whether you want to call them resolutions or not, you've made these goals. Most people pick very random high level things. So it's like, I'm going to lose weight this year, or I'm going to go to the gym more. But like, what does that actually mean?
How do we quantify it?
How do we quantify it? Like, let's get really specific, because that is the exact gap that we help so many of our clients close is initially. And we've talked about this in other episodes where it's like, we don't want you to quit. We want you to get so clear about what you want that it is so quantifiable that we can then match it up to your actual real life and help you build that structure around the season that you're in now, the energy that you have, and the time that you have, so that you can actually see results. And that's when everything starts to shift. So if you've been spinning all of your wheels like the same way over and over again, you can like look back on like all the decades past and be like, this is my pattern. This is just what I do. Like, maybe it's time you reach out for help, and you can connect with us like any way you want. We're on Instagram. We have our website. We have the show notes. Like, all you got to do is like click that one little button and things actually start to go in a different direction for you. And we can support you in defining what that new direction looks like. But unless you take the action,
you're going to stay stuck.
You're going to stay stuck.
Yeah, nothing changes. Nothing changes.
That's right.
Exactly. And when we think about like how to actually take that approach, like going from overhauling everything all at the same time, it doesn't work. I love this saying. I think you were the first one to say it, T, but you were like, do you want to do 75 hard over and over and over again? Or do you want to just figure out how to do 365 consistent?
I love that.
And to me, it was like one of my favorites, because people are like, I'm going to, in 75 hard, they're like 2-a-day workouts and 45-minute walks outside, and you know, they're reading 10 pages and they're doing cold plunges, and they're doing for 75 days in a row, and if you miss one day you have to restart all 75 days, and it's like, that sounds just like punishment to me.
It does.
And what's the point? Because if your root problem is something bigger, like I just had a call with someone yesterday, and she was saying, I asked her what a few things she tried was. She's like, well, the biggest success I had was like 8 years ago, and she did this plan where she was working out every day, and it was like a lot of hits. She's like, I was going balls to the wall. She's like, I pretty much ate like next to no carbs, and she's like, I lost 70 pounds. And long story short, she said she gained the weight back. And then I said, you know, one thing I am going to mention here is, you said you were extremely successful, but I don't really call that being extremely successful, right? In losing the weight, yes, but maybe we can redefine success not as like the fastest weight loss, but as like what are you sustaining from that? Like, how long have you been able to sustain that? Because in my eyes, success is when you've changed your lifestyle and identity, not just when you've achieved an outcome-based goal one time
for a finite amount of time, might I add, right? That doesn't take you through.
Yeah, those are such good points. And it comes back to the plan, right? When you need to be able to pivot, you don't know what you don't know. And so all you know, most women, is how to diet and how to do that as fast and aggressively as possible, which ultimately sets us up for failure. And what I love what we do with our clients is we teach them how to pivot. We teach them how to create momentum, get the wins under their belt, and then they learn how to navigate all of those elements that come up in their life. And what winter looks like for one person and might look very differently than their summer, because their energy and their time and the different things that are happening in that life. And so learning how to navigate your year with that outside lens is so important to keeping you consistent across the year and have you preventing you from actually quitting.
The one reminder to people is that however you think right now is keeping you where you're at, right? Like, so the decisions you make and the line of thinking that you have, it feels familiar to you, but it's not what's going to serve you. So like the theme here is like, you might think, oh, but I know that this is what works for me because cutting carbs and working out every day, and this is what's worked for me, but it's like, but this hasn't sustained you. So something has to change.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to, honestly, very close to what I was going to say. It's like, you know, redefining what success looks like. Because if you have to keep starting and stopping something, like you said, T, that's not actually successful. You wouldn't be here if what you were doing is successful. Jordan, I think this is one of your famous quotes, was that, we see a lot of women and we say to them, like, you will have dieted before us, but you will not do that again after us, because we're going to set you up for success. Because it's one thing to have your coach help you pivot through all of this. And we do that. But our goal is to have you then be able to know how to navigate and pivot on your own, right? So you can do this long after your work with us is done, because life will continue to change and evolve. Things will come up. And if you don't have that skill or those systems in place, then you will just you'll tumble. When life gets going, you'll just fall. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Totally agree. And it comes back to the fact that most women are like, I know how to diet. I know how to lose 20 pounds. I've done it before. I've done it a million times, but do you know how to stay there?
Yeah.
And that's really where the new skills come into place, and that I love so much, because when we introduce that to them and they're like, oh my God, I know how to stay here now. I know how to navigate all of these things. I've got a game plan. It's when things start to go from feeling chaotic and frustrating and overwhelming and when you ultimately quit, to when you're actually able to be calm, cool, collected, and be like, I got this on lockdown. Yeah. I can keep going.
Yeah. And I also think the process, when you think back to all of those things you did that allowed you to lose 20, 70, whatever pounds, aside from the fact that you didn't keep your results, how was that experience for you? Yeah. Did you enjoy that dieting period? Did you enjoy restricting yourself and maybe not being able to go out for dinner for someone's birthday? That's the other thing that makes what we do so special, is that you're not only going to sustain what you've got for life, you're going to actually enjoy the process. Right? Yeah. Which is so important. So we could do a whole episode on that.
We sure can. And it's the motivation gets you started, and that's where people get excited in the new year. And the system, the structure, the accountability, the sustainability of that approach is what keeps you going in the times when you would normally quit. 100%. And that's when women can start to move away from, I need a reset. I'm going to start again on Monday. Forget January. I'm just going to start in February again. And you can actually live your life and just keep going. And so once you have that strategy, though, step is keeping going when life happens. And I think we want to dig a little bit deeper into that when things get busy and stressful and messy. And T, you are so good at helping women pivot through those dips in life. Let's dig into it. I want to hear your perspective on this.
So let's talk about how we can help you keep that momentum, because as you know, we like you to leave every one of our episodes with something practical and tactical. So as we've established, it's not just about you making this magic resolution and then, your whole life is going to change. We want to actually build the identity and the right habits that are going to help you maintain momentum, right? And one of the quotes I love from Layla Hermosi, and we touched on it earlier, is that something to the effect of being an adult is realizing that you can not want to do something and do it anyway.
That is the entirety of being an adult.
Exactly, right? It's funny when I'm sorry, but listen, if this is you, I'm calling you lovingly, I'm calling you up, not calling you out. Yeah. Because if you've been I just wasn't really feeling the workout. It's well, imagine if your kid was I'm not really feeling school today, Mom. I'm not really feeling. Every day, my kids are I don't feel like brushing my teeth. I'm well, I don't feel like having this conversation, but here we are. I tell them that. So I'm trust me, I don't always feel like it either. I'm not a morning person. Right. But this is you, if you established I want to get XYZ done, you don't have to love it. Hey, I'm not asking you to love it, but you do need to make these changes. So really what I want to lead here with is that you don't need to be miserable in the process, but changing parts of your identity is going to require doing uncomfortable things.
Yes.
And this is I went on a mini rant about this in my stories, but it's also accepting that you have to make a compromise. You don't have to make, sacrifice your whole entire life. You don't have to overhaul your life, but you're going to have to make changes. Definitely. So just going into that with that expectation. And also when you are making changes to your lifestyle, let's say a big one for our girls is always the batch cooking, right?
Yeah.
I don't like the leftovers at the beginning. They say this. But it takes too long. Oh, it's 3 hours. I always forget later on in the week. And all these kind of reasons come up. Sometimes y'all are making excuses. We love you, but it does happen, right? So, and we've all done it. I know I've said those things too. So we just want to establish that these are the things that are going to move the needle. How do we make them the path of least resistance? How do we establish that into our life? And not making it something that, I know James Clear talks about this a lot in Atomic Habits, but making it as easy as possible to execute. That's a big one. And also expecting that it's not always going to be perfect. Right. So if you set the expectation and something's not working, to the point of what we said earlier, we can always change the plan without compromising on the goal.
Yes.
So, if you start with all the best of the intentions and inevitably life happens, like we're talking about after Quitter's Day, you need to really learn the skill of like, how do I move on from this without missing a beat now? How do I not let this one day or weekend off plan stop me from exactly.
That's a good point.
But yeah, we can use that as an example. So like if you're like, hey, I have all the intentions to prep my food, and then life gets the best of you, and like the week ends and you're like, I'm just kind of scrounging through the pantry to put dinner together, and then here I am ordering Uber Eats. Okay, but we're not going to beat ourselves up and then Uber Eats into the next week, right?
Right.
I'm going to say, if you have a coach and you're working with one of us, tell your coach and we're going to make another game plan.
That's right.
And in that case, you could say, just looking at it from a neutral perspective, be like, all right, this was a learning experience. I've learned that I get crazy busy in the middle of the week. So what I need to do is maybe I'm going to do one batch prep a week and I'm going to freeze half of it. That's one of the tactics that we teach our clients. Because in the weekends, I do have a little bit more time. Or, you know, I realize that like I can really whip a quick meal up with like some tuna and pasta, or like even I can have eggs and toast for dinner, or like Friday nights can be my free meal and I'm going to have a pizza. But then it's more intentional, right?
Yeah. That's right.
That's what in action it looks like to pivot the plan without compromising on the goal.
Yes.
Also,
you guys add to that?
I want to add, like, what did you Uber Eats? Like, could it have been a more on-plan option? Like, it doesn't have to mean that this is where some of the education comes in, because we have our like good, better, best options, where like best would be like you planned and prepped and you have everything ready to go and this was done in advance and you're feeling so empowered and confident. Good would be like, okay, I'm whipping something together. It might not be exact, but I'm doing it. Or better, sorry. And then good is, you know, I'm Uber eating something, but like, what did you order? Was it mindful? Did you manage the portion?
Right.
There's still an opportunity to feel successful and do something better than what you would have in the past, where like, you just are like, oh, forget it. I'm just going to order like chicken wings, fries, and I'm also going to order the cake because like, why not? I'm already like off plan, right? I'm off. So I'm like really off, but like it didn't have to be that way. So I think there's an option to like wherever you're finding yourself, there's ways to also create momentum or to maintain some momentum by making a better choice than you would have in the past.
This still comes up. I just want to share a little anecdote for myself too, is I always tell my coach, because I have a coach myself. Every coach needs a coach.
Agreed.
But when I make energy balls, those are my weakness. I love them. The crumble that's left over,
You do make good energy balls, by the way.
They're so good. Thank you.
So good.
Yeah, we made them together. But there was crumble left at the bottom, like whenever there is. And I always just love snacking on that crumble.
It's so good.
And it adds up. And in the past, I literally would be like, you know what? I already ate some of this crumble, like a couple hundred calories. Let's just write off the rest of the night. But the other night, I was kind of like, oh, crap. I ate this freaking crumble again. Like, little did I know.
Right.
It always happens. And then I think, man, I went over my macros. And then I'm like, well, you know, whatever. I'm just going to move on. Like, I'm just going to take the loss. Like, how does it make sense? I know, Mare, you did this like viral reel about like, well, you messed up one thing. Might as well mess up the whole thing. Up the whole thing.
It doesn't make sense. Like when you think about it, like why does that make any sense, right? If you can't do something, I'm going to do nothing or do nothing at all. Yeah.
So I gave myself that little pep talk and I was like, you know, I'm just going to go have a glass of water and I'm going to sit on the couch. And actually, no, what I ended up doing was like, I ate a whole energy ball because I'm like, I keep snacking on this crumble, but I need to just sit down and eat it mindfully. Like I need to just be like, I needed... Like, it's somehow like in the past I convinced myself like I'm not really going over my macros if I just take a little. Yes, I am. Like, why not do it in a mindful way where I'm sitting, I'm thinking about what I'm eating, I'm really letting it. And I was actually hungry in that moment. And then my coach increased my calories. So this is just a little anecdote for like how sometimes just like, you know, taking a beat and moving on from it, but also like being flexible with your approach and pivoting it.
And I would just add one quick thing. So, you know how, you know, like everything's about patterns, right? So when you're in a situation where you're starting and stopping, if it's not perfect, I'm not doing anything at all. Every time you do that, you're reinforcing that behavior, that belief, like everything. But the opposite is also true. Like every time you break that and do what you did, T, like you choose differently, you learn from the experience, you do something more mindfully, you're now reinforcing that behavior and that belief. So, you know, keeping you stuck is being in that pattern. So why not try slowly to do something different? Because you'll build that new pattern and behavior that things didn't go as planned. Okay, deep breath. I'm just going to keep going, right? So strengthen that muscle in your brain that allows you to understand that it doesn't have to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. You're building those new neural pathways.
Yes.
And it's also redefining what success looks like. Because sometimes we think success is just the scale weight. It's seeing your physique change. And don't get me wrong, that could be certainly a part of it. That's what we factor in. But more importantly, it's all the things we talked about. It's success is like keeping the promises to yourself you said you were going to keep, stacking wins on top of each other, building the momentum, and really just making different decisions than you did in the past. So these are called the inputs, right? Like the inputs are like the things you do, which you always have control over. You can always do something that's going to move you in the right direction. And every time you make a better choice, even if you're crawling toward your goal sometimes, you're moving in that direction. This is what's going to lead to the outputs. This is what leads eventually to the scale and your physique changing. But like, you can't just measure your success by like, is the scale moving fast enough? And if it's not, then you're going to go back to your old ways. Cause that is like the quitter's mindset that we don't want to be in. That's the mindset most people are in who are quitting on their goals statistically by tomorrow. So we don't want you there. So what we really want to leave you guys here with, so far is that like, you don't need to start over when it's a Monday or next month, or, you know, if you mess up that's it. That's a write-off for January. How about trying something new where you just resume at the next meal? That's what I always tell my clients. The next meal, the next workout, the next opportunity, you're going to do your best. And if you don't quite hit the goals that you want to be on the right timeline, it doesn't matter as long as you're moving in the right direction. Would you guys add anything?
Oh, I think we hit it on the head. I think we definitely did. Amazing.
All right, Mare. Yeah, take us home.
So if there's one thing we want you to take away from this episode, we want you to take it all away. But if there's just that one thing we need you to hold on to, it's that Quitter's Day does not have to be part of your story anymore. If that's been you year after year, it stops today. The women who follow through with their goals, remember, they're not relying on motivation and excitement to keep them going. They're building identity. They're doing that through routines, systems, consistency, and that is what's going to carry you through, period. So instead of throwing in the towel on Quitter's Day, halfway through January, make this the year that you follow through, because there's nothing wrong with you. You're not like, we say this all the time, like the ladies who work with us, they're not unicorns, right? You can do this just like they can. You're not bad at sticking to things. You can make a decision today that is going to give you a completely different year than you've ever had before. And that starts right now. So, you know, if what we talked about today has made you realize that, you have quit in the past and you want support rewriting that story, we would love for you to connect with us through our contact form. And you can tell us like what's been hard for you. Tell us what you actually want for yourself and maybe reflect on where you tend to fall off. And then we can help you figure out what the next right step could look like for you, for your life. Remember that your future self is not waiting for motivation. She's waiting for you to take action. So we want you to take it today, right now. And we hope you have a great rest of the day. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.